Good morning, everybody. Today I'd like to just do a short little video about the motives of the various people involved in this case. First up, Steve. Famously, we hear from Dean and Jerry that Steve didn't have a motive. But in actual fact, thanks to the superb efforts of Bert and Ernie, they actually managed to get Brendan to say that Steve didn't enjoy his freedom and wanted to go back into jail. Absolutely absurd. We also famously are told that Brendan wanted to know what it was like. Again, total nonsense. During that same confession, Brendan says that he was worried about getting Teresa pregnant and that he was too young to be a father. At the moment, the focus is on Bobby Dassey, and with what's on the computer and the fact that he was the one that was accessing that stuff, he's going to have to work very hard to try and convince Kathleen Zellner that he wasn't involved in murdering Teresa Halbach. Scott Taddick. We've seen and heard of his intense hatred of Stephen Avery. And I would also add, at the time that Stephen was looking at becoming very rich, I would suggest that he was also very jealous. We know that Ryan Hillegas was Teresa's former boyfriend, and no doubt that it could have been a crime of passion, that he was intensely annoyed at Teresa's rejection of him. Manitrock Sheriff's Department. And I'm struggling to think of a reason. No? Okay. Anybody think of any reason why they might get rid of Teresa Halbach? I'm sure there was one. Oh, that was it, yes. $36 million. That was a very good reason. And of course we know about the assassination unit. I've mentioned it a few times already. But significantly, it was the fact that their recently retired sheriff, Tom Kosarak, was facing bankruptcy as a result of this case. And that would have been hugely, hugely embarrassing for Manitrock Sheriff's Department. And they really did close ranks on this one. Even though he was retired, there was no way they were going to let their former top dog suffer the indignity of being declared bankrupt. Now, when looking at other motives, why do we as supporters and why do guilters and why everybody else involved in this case do what they do? Excuse me. First up, the Truthers, led by Kathleen Zellner. Our motive is justice and respect for the memory of Teresa Halbach. And I can think of no better way of demonstrating that respect for the memory of Teresa Halbach than to quote the fact that somebody, we don't know who, some people might know, but somebody put up a billboard, I believe 3 billboards in Manitrock, simply asking for justice for Teresa Halbach. And as I say, I wholeheartedly applaud whoever it was. I suspect, as I say, a group got together and did that. Interestingly, I did a little bit of research this morning. The guilters like to accuse Kathleen Zellner of coming into this case for fame and fortune. That is complete nonsense. She's already got that. And I was curious to find out typically what would be the rate of commission that she would get out of a civil suit. And apparently in some states there is a set amount. I'm not too sure if it's the same in Wisconsin, but I think we're looking at 33%. Now, 33% of 100 million, again, you don't need to have the mathematic skill of Eric Hosey to work out. We're looking at 33 million for Kathleen Zellner, leaving Steve a mere 66 million. And as truthers, Kathleen Zellner's job is to get Steve out by discovering the truth about what happened to her. And we also want to see the full exposure of Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department's corruption. Moving on, the guilters. They simply want Steven Avery to be guilty. Their big fear is that he will be let out on a mere technicality. That mere technicality, of course, being actual innocence. They see that as purely academic. They even rejoice that he was wrongfully convicted the first time round. Bear that in mind. They are absolutely delighted that he did 18 years wrongfully the first time round. Their hatred of Steven Avery knows no bounds. Another example, when Kathleen Zellner's first steps towards Judge Sukovich to get a hearing and she rejected it, one of their supporters even sent flowers to Judge Supovich. And of course, both the guilters and I would say the judges as well in this case, they see us truthers as being unpatriotic. They would say that whilst the legal system, and I never ever use the word justice system, it's an injustice system, it's certainly not a justice system, that the legal system isn't perfect, but it's the best that can be expected, and that is simply wrong. They point out, in effect, that the end justified the means. Special mention for Ken Kratz, the poor Ken Kratz. All he wanted was to be adored and to be considered the prize. And I'm afraid he's failed miserably at that. On to one of my favourite subjects, Robert Herman. All he wants is for the status quo to be maintained, for there to be no change, for making a murderer to simply be a ripple on the ocean. And of course it's an absolute tsunami. And of course in Calumet County, they also want to maintain the status quo. Remember that when Jeff Helb was running for sheriff, he had about 25 of his posters removed. One wonders if the night shift patrol at Calumet Sheriff's Office were given special missions to accomplish. And I've quoted this again before recently, and I particularly like this quote that was sent to me by Dave Bogotka. The guilters accuse us truthers of standing on graves and asking awkward questions. As you know, I came into this case from partly a journalistic point of view because my daughter was studying journalism when she first told me about Making a Murderer. And I think we have to accept that the motives for the journalists are to try and get as sensational a story as possible. But unfortunately, Some want to report the facts of the case honestly, and some just want to continue and parrot the words of the former special prosecutor, the disgraced former sexting prosecutor. Words can't really describe him, can they? I can think of a few, but they're not appropriate in public. And also, under the heading of journalists, I would suggest that people that do the YouTube channels, such as Eric Ozee and the lovely Laura and Casey Martinez and Ali Apperson and Fresh Start Monday and all these people. And I know for a fact that as far as Eric Ozee is concerned, his motive is to see the growth of all of the YouTube channels that look into wrongful convictions in general and how to improve the legal system over there in across the pond, and that has to be applauded. I suspect that he wishes that Stephen Moore did not have a full Windsor after telling us everybody that he prefers his double wraparound nonsense. He does of course have one, what I would call impossible dream. His fantasy would be that one day he could actually prove that Captain Crunch is British. Anyway, that's all I've got time for today. Have a think about the motives in this case, and I think it's pretty clear. You know, it's not rocket science, is it? It's pretty clear where the problems lie in this case. Bye for now.